Yeah. Hello. Great. So, hey, hello. My name is Sophia Kariotaki. I recently finished my doctorate in counselling psychology at the University of Manchester, and this was my doctoral thesis. If you understand from my accent, I am Greek, and even though this wasn't my original topic, due to the situation in my country, I chose to change my topic and do something that I felt was relevant on what was going on in Greece. Some of you, possibly many of you, know better than me how recession has affected Greece financially, but it also has affected a lot many psychologically. So the purpose of this research is to explore in a narrative framework, using the narrative methodology, how recession has affected young Greeks who have recently graduated or were about to graduate, and more particularly to see what are their feelings about the recession, how this has impacted their lives, and how they perceive their future. You probably have heard a lot about the recession. It's been in the news the last 4 years almost, and especially in Greece, it's daily, I assume. So I don't want to go through that, but I want to point out that one of the most serious problems that is faced by Greek is the youth unemployment. Youth unemployment from age 18 to 24 impacts the 61.7% of the population. And for the Greeks among 25 and 29 rose to 38%. Of course, because of lack of experience, during recession, young workers are often the ones last hired and first fired. There have been a lot of warnings by researchers about the possibility of a lost generation, where young graduates who enter the labor market during the period of recession will have permanent scarves. And actually have been research that been done during the recession in the 80s, and they've seen that the scarves can be permanent. Coming from the perspective of lifespan theories, that in order to achieve a healthy development, you have to go through particular tasks during your lifespan, I was particularly interested to see how individuals who, even though they start going through the first steps to become an adult, gain an education, gain a qualification, how recession affected them, because they start doing the first steps to go into adulthood, but because of the recession they cannot go to the next stages, which is employment, financial dependency, or having a family. Indeed, lifespan theory says that the 5 markers of adulthood are move the parenthood to dependent living, completion of education, starting a full-time job, establishment of an intimate relationship, and becoming a parent. These tasks are not seen as separate, but altogether define adulthood, and more particularly, the one will affect the other. For instance, as we're talking about recession, if a person if the lack of full employment, if a person has difficulties to find a job, this will affect them to move from the parental home, having an intimacy relationship, and having a family. Research has shown that positive transition to adulthood has been linked to improved psychological well-being, whereas missing transitions has a negative impact on individual psychological functioning. Through positive adult transitions, the individual has the opportunity to successfully face developmental problem challenges through which they achieve a competence, autonomy, and relatedness, and increase their self-sufficiency. There's also a direct association between the timing of adult well-being and psychological well-being. Elder also pointed that social and historical conditions, such as recession, may negatively impact the transition to adulthood. Of course, as recession, the main thing that recession has negative impact is the employability. And so I also went to the literature to see how employability is related with psychological well-being. So Research has shown that being employed is one of the strongest factors that contribute to subjective well-being. Unemployment is related with higher level of depression and lower self-esteem, psychological distress, substance abuse, and physical illness. So now I would like to talk a bit more of the methodological framework that I use in my research. For me, it was important to give voice and go in depth on understanding the experience of my participants, so I chose a qualitative methodology. And more particularly, I chose a narrative framework. Why narrative? Narrative inquiry as a research sees stories as fundamental to human identity formation and uses stories as the main object of investigation for getting an understanding of the human experience. Through the process of telling, recording, and analyzing personal life narratives, the researcher provides an in-depth understanding of how human beings create meaning in terms of their existence. In narrative inquiry, the story itself is the object of investigation, giving us the opportunity to understand and relate to one's own experience. Again, narrative is particularly useful on investigation transition, and having a narrative perspective can be particularly useful in research where self-identity is being explored. For that reason, I found this methodology was appropriate for my research, where the central focus was the self-identification of young graduates regarding their prospective lives and the future during a period of recession. So how I select my participant? I used the snowballing chain sampling method, where asking well-situated people if they know someone. I managed to collect my data. My participant had to be to the 22 to 30 bracket. They had to be Greek, recent graduate, or Greek soon-to-be graduate. And my participant, I don't know if you're aware of narrative methodology, but usually the sample is quite small because you try to go in depth. So my participants were 4, 3 women and 1 man. 2 of them had an undergraduate degree, 1 of them had a master's degree, and 1, who was a superhero, had an undergraduate degree, was on his final year of his 2nd degree, and he was also doing a PhD. He was, and also when I conducted the interview, he was also doing his military service. He was a hero. So, trying to collect my data, I used narrative interviews. Narrative interviewing gives the researcher the opportunity to generate a detailed account of experience where the participants are enabled to share their experience, stories, and perception in their own word with little probably from the researcher. Actually, my main interview questions was, what are your thoughts and feelings about your life and your future during the period of recession? And then, of course, accordingly, I was asking them regarding what they were saying to me. So now I would like to present my participants. I spent a lot of time with them, so I feel quite close to them. So my first participant, of course, these are pseudonyms. They're not the real names. So my first participant is Anna. When I interviewed Anna, she just graduated. She had a degree in education. She was 22 years old and from a city in mainland Greece. Anna was always trying hard to have great marks, and she managed to get the marks she needed to pass in a very demanding course. Just to remind to the Greeks and the people who don't know, 5-6 years ago, to study education was really competitive. It had similar marks like studying medicine, because people had a guaranteed job after that. So Anna wanted to be financially dependent and have her own family. Was always her dream, and this is why she chose this profession, as she hoped that being a teacher would help her to fulfill her dream. Now I would like to give you a summary of Anna's story as she shared with me. In her story, Anna described how she had always tried hard to achieve her goals, which were to find a job and become independent. This is why she chose to study primary education, as it seems a safe choice that would guarantee her a stable future. She expressed how she felt when the recession hit Greece. She felt that all her dreams were shattered, that her dreams of independence would never be realized. She expressed feelings of anger, disappointment, and hopelessness. She felt anger against the politician that brought her and her family to this situation, a disappointment and hopelessness for her future and her life. In her interview, she described in detail these feelings, how researcher had changed herself and her personality. She used to describe herself as a strong person, full of dreams and self-confidence, and the belief that hard work will guarantee a better future diminished. For her, to a person who feels weak and hopeless for her life and future, she saw moving abroad as the only solution for her life, solution her problems. Where not only she was hoping that through that way she might still be able to find a job, but as well as a reaction because she was feeling angry. And she didn't want to stay to her country anymore, as she felt she was being cheated. Finally, she expressed concern about her parents, friends, and family, and as well how recession impacted her relationship with others. The next person is Panos. He was the superhero. At the time that the interview was conducted, Paulos had an undergraduate degree, and he was in his final year of his next degree in medicine, and he was also doing his PhD. He was 30 years old, from a city in mainland Greece. He always wanted to become a doctor, but as he didn't have the credit that he needed, he decided to study vet, and he managed to finish this course in 5 years, even though the average graduation of this course was 8 years, hoping to study medicine. He gave the exams twice, and he managed to pass. And after he failed once, he decided to start a PhD. Again, Pavlos talked about the difficulties that he had and the sacrifices that he made to make his dreams to study medicine to come true. While studying medicine, he was also doing a PhD. Apart of the extreme workload, he expressed recession-related difficulties which impacted his study and life in general. He described feeling of disappointment and hopelessness regarding his future, not knowing how to achieve his goals, realizing his own personal weaknesses and limitations. At the same time, he expressed hope, and he was feeling confident that because he loved his profession, he would be able to achieve his dream. However, he described the adaptation he went through due to the recession. He felt that a move abroad was the only solution to make his dream come true. Finally, he mentioned his concern of how recession affected his parents and his country in general, and he expressed worries for the future of Greece. Then we have Maria. When I got the interview with Maria, she finished her master's degree and she was looking for a job. She was 25 years old from a city in northern Greece. Maria has studied psychology and had a master in special needs. Even though she didn't have the grade that she needed to study psychology, with her parents' support, she studied in a private university, and then she did her master's in the UK. At the time that I conducted the interview with Maria, she had been looking for a job for over a year, and she discussed her difficulties finding any kind of job, as what she went through during the recession. This situation made her feel very down and disappointed, and she considered a move abroad, but wasn't sure if this would solve the problems either. In this uncertainty, she expressed her disappointment and feelings of hopelessness. She felt as though she would never find a job in her field, expressed how much she loves her profession. She also mentioned that she felt inadequate as she was overlooked for any kind of job because of her lack of experience. This situation made her feel uncertain for her future, and she lacked hope that her life dreams will ever come true. She also shared her concern regarding her parents, as not only they were sad because of her situation, but they had an added worry to have to support her without having the financial comfort that they used to have. Finally, she shared some of her friends' experiences, pointing that every person in her generation is going through a similar process. Finally, we have Zoe. At the time that I got the interview with Zoe, she just finished her undergraduate degree in education as well. She was 22 years old from southern Greece. She had very good grades, and again, she chose to do this degree because she liked this job, and she hoped that it would help her to become financially independent. In her story, Zoe described her hopes and her expectations she had regarding her career. She was once very confident about her future. She described how research had changed her and her perception, leaving her feeling uncertain and insecure for her future, and unable to find other alternatives. She said that the crisis forced her to adapt to a situation she has not planned for, as she had never agreed to make these adjustments. She also expressed frustration as having to financially rely on her parents. She felt trapped and did not feel like an adult. She felt that she would never escape this dependence on her parents, and she would never earn a normal salary, expressing anger against the Greek government for bringing them to this situation. She also expressed concern for her future, feeling hopeless and insecure, and she was worrying about how this experience will impact her psychologically. Overall, she feels very disappointed about her future and unlucky, feeling that she will never have the opportunities to make her dreams come true. Finally, she discussed how the recession has impacted the country in general, pointing out particular concerns for her parents and her parents' well-being and her friends. Now we'll move on to my analysis. As I said, I'm a supporter of narrative methodology, and I do believe on the power of the stories. So trying to find a way to analyze my data, I went to the stories, I did them carefully, going through this analysis. I decided to use a thematic narrative analysis as a way to analyze my data, as it seems the appropriate, as all of the participants cover some particular themes. And this is a summary of the analysis process. So in examining the narrative of the participants, I have some water. 5 things were revealed. Career choice, broken tips at collecting the pieces, impact of recession on respective participants' life, impact of recession on the individuals, participant feelings about the future. These are the themes and the sub-themes. After the presentation about the theoretical framework and the methodology, I would like now to present the findings of each theme and discuss, having in mind the literature review as well. What I'm going to do is, because I want to stay as close to the stories as possible, you will see some of the quotations of the participants here, while I will discuss the findings. I also would like to point that the whole process of the analysis is conducted in Greek. Interviews were in Greek, analysis was in Greek, and I only translate the points that I put on my research for the benefits of the readers. Again, the narratives reveal that the participants have related their career choice with their dreams regarding their future life. As Maria said, and all of them wanted to do this job. As Maria and Zoe and Pablo said, this was what they want to do in their life, and they deeply love the profession. And Anna as well mentioned that she chose this course because she was expecting a certain lifestyle, as she said here. Following the perspective of developmental theories that consider development as an ongoing process where any stage in the life course is seen as a consequence for past experience, we can argue that the participants, as they fulfilled already a task, gained a qualification, they were positive and hopeful that they're going to achieve the next tasks in their development. And this is also what they expressed. I knew that I was going to be a teacher, I will work in a school, and I will also be able to do other things, as Anna mentioned. Or as Zoe said, we were sure that we were going to find a job in a public school that would have a relatively good salary. However, the recession hit them. As Anna mentioned, I felt I woke up one morning and I said to myself that that's it. I will not have any future, and suddenly I will have to live again with my parents. Another important I'm going here. I'm sorry. Again, we can see about how some external factors such as recession may prevent a healthy development. The participants revealed how difficult it was for them to see their dreams to be shattered because of the recession, expressing feelings of disappointment and despair, leaving them unable to plan for their future. Following the participants' narration, it can be seen that the recession impacts them in any level of their life: financial level, relational level, and personal level. For instance, I think that financial level, as Maria said, she kept looking for jobs. She couldn't even find a job in a bakery because they were asking for experience. And she was trying to explain to them that I know how to count. I finished school, I finished university, but still they were asking for experience. The young qualified participants were concerned that because of the increased level of unemployment and their lack of experience, they weren't even be able to find a job that was lower on their qualifications. As a result, they felt hopelessly disappointed about the career prospects. And again, as I mentioned earlier, literature back up their worries, showing that this age group is the more vulnerable. First fired, last hired. Seeing that it's difficult to gain financial independence, all the participants shared another concern, which was about their parents and how recession affects them, as still they rely on them, and also how recession impacts their relationship in general. As Zoe mentioned, we used to be a fairly well-off family, and now my parents have to start saving money to go to my sister's graduation. Or my mom used to visit me in Thessaloniki quite often, but the last 2 years she has not come that often. This alienation impacts my friendships too, the feeling that we feel alienated because of the recession. And again, from the narratives was highlighted that the recession had a big impact on the individual's personality and well-being. All of the participants experienced significant changes on the way that they perceived themselves and on the way that they felt. Some of the personal changes that they shared with me was that they were feeling hopeless and weak. They were feeling unable to dream, out of control, and unable to identify themselves with characteristics they used to use before, such as being proud, strong, or feeling under control. As Pavlos mentioned, I'm just one small fish in the ocean. Or Anna, you cannot make plans for your future anymore. With this situation, you cannot have dreams. Another important perception about their identity was the participants' need for financial independence. Again, we mentioned earlier that financial independence was one of the main markers to adulthood. He said he pointed that young adults who failed to achieve these markers, they felt like a failure or unstable. As Zoe mentioned, in the process of life after university, it is the process of life after university to be independent. You cannot still ask your mom to give you money for shoes or holidays, and to have discussed with your mom whatever you want to do. You are an adult and you have to do what you want without relying to your parents to tell them I want this and to get the answer no. In this case, you are not an adult, you are a child. I believe that actually I'm still a child. Another significant perception of their identity that all the participants described was feeling powerlessness, sadness, and having fatalistic feelings, and feeling low psychologically. In the current economic climate in Greece, all of the participants expressed strong feelings of disappointment about their future. Uncertainty, hopelessness, disappointment, and insecurity as well. I'm afraid to dream because I'm going to get disappointed again. All of my dreams have been shattered, as Anna mentioned. Under these circumstances, it's important to mention, and finally, of course, I want to say that there was some hope, but the hope was relying on feelings that they have to move abroad. And I would like us to mention that even there was this hope, still they acknowledged it was a compromise. That if the recession didn't hit their country, this wasn't going to be their dream. It was just a dream because of they had to change, they have to think something alternatively. Under these circumstances, it's important to mention that, they try to adapt the situation. Unfortunately, again, This has confirmed that some of the participant fears, as it showed that the impact of the recession on one's life is permanent and has long-term effects. And they have to, unfortunately, as Richard says, realize that their lives will not be as they used to be. Young people who graduate from college during the recession of the early 80s suffered permanent earning declines over time. Individuals' frame is shaped by historical context of their existence and the social circumstances of their life, as well as the life around them. And individuals' view of the reality around them mold their views of their identity and placement within the reality. And this is the shift, that they mold their identity differently, but because of the recession, they're trying to identify who they are. Researchers argue that experiences like those described by the participants, that people have actually emotionally invested, may be perceived as significant internal losses, and the individual may go through a grieving process. However, when someone dies, we expect them to grieve. We give them the space, we give them the opportunity, we give them culturally and religiously, we give them the space to grieve. But often in these situations, people don't have the opportunity to acknowledge this grief, to realize actually I have lost something and I'm grieving. It is important for them, therefore, to acknowledge and validate these losses in order to experience a healthy grieving process. Some of the losses that I identified from the participant stories can be summarized in 3 categories. The loss of the assumptive world, where they grow up in a different environment and then they have to realize that they cannot live as they used to live. The loss of self and identity, where, as I mentioned earlier, they realize that their personality has changed. They are not the people that they used to be, but they didn't know who they were. They were feeling weak and helpless, while they used to feel strong and confident. And loss of dreams in the dream world. They had different expectations. They hoped, they dreamed that their life is going to be in this particular way, but unfortunately it will not. I think that it's important the governments, especially in Greece, because they have recession, to establish in-depth policy intervention at different levels to address the difficulties that young people are facing. It is important to help them to find a job, but also it's important to recognize the psychological wounds that they are affected by the recession, and find ways to address this problem. So therefore, trying to follow the previous argument that these people are grieving, I turn to counseling and bereavement counseling and therapy to see how we can actually help provide them some support. So I came with the following clinical interventions. Again, as I mentioned, coming from a bereavement counseling perspective. So the individuals need to recognize the loss, first of all. Counseling can help these individuals to recognize, name, and validate their losses. This is an important part of the therapeutic process, as it increases the reality of the loss and helps them to mourn for the lost world. Then they have to accept the new reality. Again, the importance to help them to accept the new reality. Talking about the loss experience and clarify what happened can help them to come to terms with their experience, consider their next steps and begin the healing process. Then we need to accommodate and reframe the loss, where the individual will start picking up their pieces and recognize what parts of their identity and reality has been lost. Quite often, and as was described for the participants, they feel that they have lost everything. They are not the own who used to be, but actually there are parts of them that are still there, and it's important to help them identify them. And then help them go through the relearning phase, where they can learn how to be and act differently. In this process of relearning, being resilient and adaptive can be considered significant attitudes to the individual. And then will come the personal growth, where learning from the lost experience, they will be able to revalue and rebuild their life and reality. Actually, experience such as a successful grieving process can contribute to positive psychological changes, and they identify these positive changes on 5 different levels: new possibilities, relating to others, personal growth, spiritual change, and appreciation of life. I hope that this research gave voice to those individuals and show that recession has not only economical impact but also psychological and affects individual life in many different levels. And I hope that I introduce something that can help young population, those that they have similar experiences like my sample, to address these issues, to heal their wounds and not become a lost generation. Thank you.